Okay, good morning. So I'll be taking a law and ethics paper. In the law and ethics paper, we'll start with the corporate law portion today. So corporate law is 35%. This is your whole Companies Act 2013. So we'll start with the Companies Law today. Now in the Companies Law, what do you mean by a company basically? So what do you mean by a company? A company is basically any entity which is formed by a group of one or more persons. That means one person can also form a company, or more than one person can also form a company. It is basically set for a particular objective. So every company has an objective. All the people working for the company would be working to fulfill that one particular objective. Now, basically, there are different types of companies that we have to go through. So the first type of company we have to go through is known as a Section 8 company. Now, what is a Section 8 company? A Section 8 company is also known as a charitable company. A company which is set for association, not for profit. It is a company which is for association, not for profit. Now, we have what is the objective of setting this company? So the objective of the company is they work for the betterment of the society. They would work for the betterment of the society. Company is any entity which is set for a particular objective. The objective can be anything. The objective can be to make profit, or the objective can be not to make profit. Now, company is formed by can be formed by a single person also, or it can be formed by a group of persons also. So, how do you understand the company as? So, the company can be very well understood through its different features. So, what are the different features? It's a separate legal entity. So, separate legal entity means it is distinguished from its members. The people who form the company are known as the members of the company. So they are different from that of from the company. That means if I am talking about Tata Sons and Company, that does not mean that Tata Sons Company is same as the sons of the Tatas. So both are different. The sons of Tatas, Ratan Tata is different from Tata Sons Company. Then they have limited liability. Limited liability means the liability of the member of the company would be limited to the shares held by that person, and also in the shares only till the unpaid value on the shares. That means if I have a 10 rupees face value share, and if on that share I have paid only 8 rupees, then now my liability is limited to the 2 rupees that I have not paid. Then it has perpetual succession. This means that the company is considered as a going concern. So it is continued to have existence today, tomorrow, and day after. Separate property. Separate property means if I'm talking about Tata Sons and Company and Ratan Tata, that means that the property of both the company and the individual running the company would be different. This means that the furniture of Tata Sons Company cannot be the private property of Ratan Tata. His property would be distinguished from the property of Tata Sons and Company. Now, company has a common seal. Basically, this is a change now. This is not there now in Companies Act 2013. In Companies Act 2013, common seal is being removed. Now, the company is not required to own a common seal to put on its important papers. So now, when would a paper become an official document of the company? So the paper would become the official document of a company if it is signed by two directors of the company, or if the company is not having two directors, then by one director and a company secretary of the company. So this is a new provision we must know according to Companies Act 2013 that the common seal is being removed and the paper to be made official, it has to be signed by 2 directors, and if 2 directors are not available, then 1 director and 1 company secretary. Now the next feature of the company is transferability of shares. When a company forms the capital by issuing shares, then these shares are not the property of one individual person. They are easily transferable. So if I buy it today, this does not mean that I have to own it for the lifetime. I can transfer it freely to another person. That means buying and selling of shares is possible. But it is not possible in an open market if we are talking about a private company. So basically, here only we can distinguish the private company from a public company. A private company is a company which has a share capital, but this share capital is formed by issuing shares only to a specified number of people. And the number of people here limited in a private company is 200. I'll repeat, 200. It's okay. It's okay. 200 people. So 200 people are 200 members can be the maximum members in case of a private company. But when we are talking about a public company, the shares can be issued to any number of people here. Now the next feature of the company is it has the capacity to sue and be sued. This means that as a legal entity, the company can be taken to court and the company can sue any other company also. Now the next very important thing that we must understand here is lifting of the corporate wheel. Now what is lifting of the corporate wheel? Lifting of the corporate wheel means okay, before that we must understand that when we are talking about the word corporate, we are talking about company. Now, we already know that company is a separate legal entity. That means the members of the company have a distinguished entity from the corporate. Now, this means what? That when we are talking about the word company, then we are saying that the company is distinguished from its members. This means that the members of the company have a different legal existence than the company itself. So basically all the members and the owners of the company are covered behind the company. This means what? That if a company, suppose if Reliance Industries has entered into a contract with some another company and the Reliance company could not fulfill the contract. In this case, the company would be the one who would be sued for non-fulfillment of the contract and not the member of the company who would be sued. This means that the member is covered under the wheel of the corporate. Now, what is lifting of the corporate wheel means? Lifting of the corporate wheel means the company defaulted because of the member. Now, because the member was responsible to bring the company to default, therefore here the company would not only be the one who would be blamed, but here the member would also be blamed. So when the member is being blamed, he is not covered under the identity of the company. Therefore, which means that the wheel which has protected the member from an unlimited liability is now being lifted, and here now the member would be the one who would be responsible and he would have to bear the liability now. So this is what we mean by lifting of the corporate wheel. Now there are various circumstances under which the wheel is lifted. So here in this table we'll discuss how this occurs. So one is protection of revenue. Now protection of revenue means what? Tax evasion. So if you would have any time heard of Satyam Company, the famous case of Satyam Company is that Raju Ramalinga, the owner of the company, was fraudulently quoting the books of accounts wherein he was showing profits in years in which there were actual losses. So what he was doing, he was hiding the true position of the company. So when he was hiding the true position of the company, he would not be protected under the name of the company. Therefore, the wheel of the corporate is lifted. He is also being put behind the bars and he is taken to jail. So this is the case where the wheel will be lifted. The next is determination of enemy character of the company. Now, what do we mean by enemy character? Enemy character means that with the nations with which we are considered at war, like generally we are considered at war with Pakistan. So with Pakistan, we have an enemy character. Now, if an Indian company has the majority of the directors who are the residents and citizens, who are the citizens of Pakistan, then this company would not be purely considered as an Indian company, and anything which happens wrong in the company would be considered as lifting of the corporate wheel, because the majority directors of the company are the citizens of a country with which we are at war. So this is the enemy character of the company. Okay. Now next we have prevention of fraud. Now prevention of fraud means what? Sometimes the corporate, sometimes the MCA. If you understand what is MCA is Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So basically, any matters which are related to the company, they are addressed in a different law, or the whole law which is being framed, the Companies Act, comes under the scanner of MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So if Ministry of Corporate Affairs feels appropriate that there should be a check put on the company, then to check the company, they lift the wheel and then they check the records of the individual members of the company also, and the records of the company also, so that any chances of fraud are also being eradicated. So that is prevention of fraud. Next is protection of public policy. Protection of public policy means if according to MCA, or if according to the government of India, any public policy means which is against the welfare of the society. So if you are promoting any product which is against the general benefit of the public, then also the wheel would be lifted by the court. Here, by the meaning of the word court, we mean NCLT. NCLT. So what is NCLT? NCLT is National Company Law Tribunal. So I've quoted you two words right now. One is MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and second is NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal. So any matters which are on a company, where would they be addressed? So they would be addressed in the National Company Law Tribunal. Next is company is mere a sham or a cloak. Now, what do we mean by it's mere a sham or a cloak? Sham or a cloak means that it is not just a plot wherein you wanted to attract customers, but you never wanted to serve them. This means what? You opened a Section 8 company. So Section 8 company is what company? A company which is set for an objective, not for profit. The objective of the company is not to make profit. So you set up a Section 8 company, and of course, according to the tax laws for the company, the Section 8 company is not attracted the same tax rate. It is not attracted the same tax rate as the other companies. So you got money from various people who wanted to put money in a Section 8 company, but you never utilized it for the purpose to serve anyone, and you ran away with that money. So this means what? The company was mere a sham or a cloak. It could not serve the purpose it was set for. Next is when a company acts as an agent of its shareholders. Agent of its shareholders. The company acts as an agent of its shareholders. This means what? Is the company an agent of the shareholders? So, um, so I'll have to tell you that company acts only on behalf of the shareholders, but it is not an agent of the shareholders.
Madam, I'm Dinyar Mehta. I have a doubt.
Please ask.
Madam, can you just explain the difference of acting on behalf of the shareholders and the agent of the shareholders part?
Yeah, sure. Any other thing?
No, ma'am, that's all.
Oh, yeah. So I was saying that company acts as an agent of its shareholders. The company does not act as an agent of the shareholders. It acts as a behalf of the shareholders. So what does this mean? That company takes money from the shareholders and this money is utilized for the normal operation of the company. So they say that I as a company am representing that whatever money I got from the shareholders would be used for the purpose of carrying the business of the company. Now, as an agent of the company means what? As an agent of the shareholders means what? That company becomes the shareholders become the principal and the company becomes an agent. So what does this mean? Company becomes the principal. Company becomes the principal means that the company is carrying on a business for a particular purpose. But this purpose does not mean that the shareholders would have an unlimited liability. So when the shareholders become the agents of the company, it means that the company is transferring unlimited liability to the shareholders. But if you remember, we have told that company does not transfer unlimited liability to the shareholders, only limited liability is transferred. When only limited liability is transferred, then that means the shareholders are acting only, the company is acting only on behalf of the shareholders to carry business. But when you transfer unlimited liability, it acts as an agent. So the difference on behalf and agent is the liability that you transfer. So if you transfer unlimited liability, that means you're taking them as agent. But if you're transferring only limited liability, that means you're treating them as on behalf of the shareholders. Is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now next is avoidance of welfare legislation. Now avoidance of welfare legislation means when we'll be studying the industrial law portion in this subject, then we'll know that there are various labor laws, there are various welfare laws which a company has to go through. So if a company wants to avoid fulfilling these welfare legislation, and therefore it is not setting up itself as an industry, but it is setting up itself as a company. This means you are going under a different tax law to avoid one particular tax law, one particular law, not tax law, one particular law. So because you wanted to avoid industrial laws or welfare laws, therefore you incorporated yourself as a company so that now you would be covered only under company laws. In this case also the wheel would be lifted. Next is to punish for contempt of court. Now, court has set up some rules and regulations for you. Court here again is NCLT. So then also you did not fulfill those legislations. So here the wheel would be lifted and all the papers, all the corporate papers would be again checked to understand why basically you want to not fulfill not abide to what the court has asked you to. So this was lifting of corporate wheel. So lifting of corporate wheel in one line means that when the members of the company are not having unlimited liability, when they are not fulfilling their duties, then they would not have limited liability, but they would have the unlimited liability because the wheel is now being lifted. Now we have the different types of companies. So the types of companies are first divided on the basis of liability. Liability, we have company limited by shares, by guarantee, and unlimited companies. So if a company has a share capital, that means the company is limited by shares. So here the section is section 2, subsection 22. So when the company has a share capital, then it is known as company limited by shares. So what is a company limited by guarantee? Basically here the members who would come to form the company, they did not contribute, they did not get shares of the company, but they gave a guaranteed amount to the company. So they said that in certain events, if the company is not able to fulfill some obligations, or in case of winding up of the company, I give a guarantee of 2 lakhs. This means that when the company has not fulfilled some obligation, or if it goes under the process of winding up, then my 2 lakh rupees would be used by the company. So so that is company limited by guarantee. Section 2, subsection 21. Then we have unlimited company. So in unlimited company, we can have a company which has issued shares, or we can have a company which has given, in which the members are given guarantee. Both the above situations are possible in an unlimited company. So an unlimited company can be a company which has share capital, and unlimited company can be a company which has a guaranteed amount, any of the two. So this was the first basis based on the liability. Now we have the second basis, which is the basis of the number of members. So in a public company can be formed by a minimum of 2 people, and the maximum people require there is no maximum limit for the public company. In a private company, the one person can also form a private company, and the maximum number of people who can be in a private company is 200. So when we are talking about a private company, we'll introduce one more company here, which is known as a one-person company. So as the name suggests, what do we mean by a one-person company? A one-person company is a company which is formed by minimum one person. Therefore, in a private company, we are saying that one or two people are required. So if a private company is formed by a single person, then it is OPC Limited. OPC Limited, the extension that would be used here would be OPC Limited. Limited by a single person. So minimum one person, and the maximum number of people in an OPC company are generally 50. So 50 is the maximum limit in case of an OPC. But when we talk about a private company which is formed by 2 or more people, the maximum limit here is 200. So we have 3 limits now. One for the OPC, 1 to 50, one for the private company, that is 2 to 200, and one for the public company, which is again 2 to unlimited. In earlier company law, the public company required minimum 7 people to be formed. But now minimum 7 people is also, that possibility is ruled out. So 2 people can also form a public company. Okay. Now we have the third kind of division here, which is on the basis of control. So on the basis of control, we have a holding company and a subsidiary company. So basically, these two things can't be understood individually. So I have to take an example, company A and company B. So if I say that company A is holding more than 50% shares of company B, or company A is controlling the board of directors of company B, then in this case, company A is your holding company and company B is your subsidiary company. So a subsidiary company is one in which the ownership or the control, so 2 words here, the ownership or the control is in the hands of another company. So the company which has the ownership or control of another company becomes the holding, and whose ownership and control is in the hands of another company becomes the subsidiary company. So when we are talking about ownership, by ownership we mean in contribution in the share capital. And when we talk about control, then it means the control of the board of directors. So whenever the word control is used, it is in relation to board of directors. And whenever the words ownership is used, then it is related to the share capital. Then we have another basis, which is on the basis of listing of shares. So on the basis of listing of shares, yeah.
I have a question with respect to the subsidiary company and the holding company. If holding company A is in another country and subsidiary company B is in another country, then which laws are applicable to subsidiary company? Do the laws of the land of the holding company apply to it, or is the laws of the land of the subsidiary company is present applies to it?
Okay, very nice. So, nice question. Holding company is the one who is having ownership or control of the subsidiary company. Therefore, the laws of the holding company would be applicable to the subsidiary company. See, when we are talking about accounting, when we form a consolidated balance sheet, then in the consolidated balance sheet, the laws that would be applicable on the subsidiary company would be the one of the holding company. But when we are talking about individual accounting for the subsidiary company, then the individual accounting can be done for according to where the company is being incorporated. So if A company is incorporated in India and B company is incorporated in US, then individual basis Indian laws and US laws can be respectively applicable. But when we are making consolidated books of accounts for the holding company, then in that case, when we are talking about taxation, then in taxation purpose, the subsidiary company has to pay taxes according to the rules of the holding company. Therefore, we say that, we consolidate financial statements so as to understand that is there any tax difference from the conversion of the subsidiary company accounting to the holding company accounting. So is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when we are talking about on the basis of listing of the company share, then we have a listed company and we have an unlisted company. So basically, what is a listed company? A listed company is the one whose shares are listed on the stock exchange. So both the companies listed and unlisted have a share capital. So when they have a share capital and the shares are freely exchangeable, then when the shares are freely exchangeable on the market, then it is said to be a listed company. But when the share exchange is a little difficult because it is not having a public platform, but still it has exchangeable and transferable shares, then it is in case of a non-listed company. So then we have company on the basis of government control. So when we are talking about government control, either it's a government company or a non-government company. So this is important, like what is a government company? A company in which the paid up share capital is held by either the central government or the state government or both, jointly or individually, is considered as a government company. So how much share has to be controlled by the government? So it should not be less than 51% of the paid up share capital. So see guys, when we talked about holding and subsidiary company, the holding had to own more than 50%. But when we are talking about government company, it is more than 51% we are talking about. So that is the difference, 50 and 51 here. And non-government company would be that company in which the government does not have a majority capital. Then we have other type of companies in which one is associate company. Now, what is an associate company? Associate company is also a little like subsidiary company, but in a holding and subsidiary company, the holding company had more than 50% of the subsidiary company. But associate companies are the one in which 20% or more control here and there between the companies happen. So significant influence. So the word here which we must understand is known as significant influence. So I just said that associate company is one in which the companies have at least 20% or more of the share capital of another company. So this means what? There is a company A, B and C. Company A has 20%, 25% contribution in B company B has 20% contribution in C. So all these three companies are associate companies. A and B is also associate, B and C is also associate. But A and C is not associate because A is not holding directly in anything in C. So significant influence is a term which means that it is not a subsidiary, but still some matters can't, some matters of the company can't be, all the decisions can't be taken by the company individually. That means companies A's decision would be affected a little by companies B's decision. So I'll give you examples of associate companies. Generally, the group companies like, you know, Reliance Group. So Reliance Group has a Reliance Petroleum also and a Reliance Jio also. So Reliance Petroleum and Reliance Jio are associate companies of the same group, that is the Mukesh Ambani Group. So in the Mukesh Ambani Group, we have a Reliance Jio also and we have a Reliance Petroleum also, wherein Reliance Petroleum has contributed in the share capital of Reliance Jio. So a significant influence is exerted on the Jio company by the petroleum company. So this is associate company. Next, we have a banking company. Basically, banking company is not covered under the Companies Act 2013, but it is covered under a separate act which is known as a Banking Regulation Act. Then we have a foreign company. Now, what's a foreign company? Foreign company means a company whose incorporation did not happen in India, but at a place distinct from India, but it conducts an activity in India. So we have a Microsoft, we have a General Motors or Google. So these companies are incorporated outside India, but they have a place of business in India. Therefore, they are known as foreign companies. Next, we have a one-person company, which I have already told you that a single person can also form a company, and it is considered as a private company. So all the provisions of the private company would be levied on a one-person company. So provisions like what? Can a private company issue shares in public? Sorry. Can a private company issue shares in public? No. So this same provision would be applicable on a one-person company also, that a one-person company cannot issue shares in public. Now we have another company which is known as small company. Now this is one more thing which is added only in Companies Act 2013 and which was not there in the 1956 Act. So this says that small company is a company which is defined according to the paid up share capital and turnover. So the paid up share capital of the company is at least 50 lakh rupees and the paid up share capital of the company is maximum 50 lakh rupees. The paid up share capital of the company is 50 lakh rupees, or if it is exceeding 50 lakh rupees, then it cannot go beyond 5 crore rupees. The turnover of the company is between 2 crores and 20 crores. So when we are talking about small companies, they are defined according to the paid up share capital and turnover. So what is paid up share capital? Paid up share capital is the number of shares of the company into the paid up amount received by the company. So this amount should be 50 lakh. Generally, it should not exceed 50 lakh rupees, but if it is exceeding, then it can go maximum till 5 crores. Similar for the case of turnover, 2 crores and 20 crores. Now, small company definition does not apply to certain companies. So here we have some exceptions. So the exceptions for the small company are holding company or subsidiary company, a Section 8 company, and a company or a body corporate governed by a special act. So we already know the meaning of a holding and subsidiary company. Now we want to know the meaning of a Section 8 company. So what is a Section 8 company? A Section 8 company is a company which is an association not for profit, which is generally set for an objective to serve some welfare purpose or for the benefit of the society, and it gets a license from central government. So any company would become a Section 8 company only after obtaining a license from the central government. So a Section 8 company can't be a small company. Then we have another company written here as an exception, a company or a body corporate governed by a special act. So what do we mean by the special act here? Special act is, if you see your books of your institute material, then you would say that this you would see ICAI. The chapter of the CMA course is being under the statute law. Statute. It is a statutory act which is the ICAI Institute is covered under a statutory act. It is not a company, but it is a statute. So therefore, when any body is being governed by a statute, then it is known as a statutory corporation. So ICAI is a statutory corporation. Therefore, the small company provisions would not apply to a statutory corporation also. Then we have another company which is known as a dormant company. So by the word dormant, we understand that it is not working. So dormant company is a company which is formed right now, but it would commence business only after some time. So when the business is not being commenced, it goes to the company's law office. That means it makes an application to MCA and says that please give me the status of a dormant company. So what happens, as soon as your company receives the status of a dormant company, you are not supposed to file in your accounting statements every year. Otherwise, if you are a company, then you have a duty to file in your papers every year. You have to give your financial statements before taxation and after taxation. So these rules won't apply if you are a dormant company. So here the section is section 455 for the dormant company. And as soon as you commence business, what you should be required to do, you would again go to the office of the MCA and you would say that I need to start the business. Then he would snatch away the status of the dormant company from you, and you can work as an active company, wherein now you would be liable to file in all your corporate papers to the MCA. Then we have an inactive company. So inactive company is the one who's not carrying business, but for how many years? 2 financial years. Or it has not filed its financial statements and the returns of the company for at least last 2 financial years. So how is a dormant company different from an inactive company? Generally, a dormant company can be the one who's incorporated as a dormant company, who's incorporated as a company right now, get the status of the dormant company from the MCA, or a dormant company can also be an inactive company which did not work for 2 years and now it says that okay, I think I won't be working for another some few years, therefore it's better to get the status of the dormant company. So this is the inactive company. Now next we have producer company. So what's a producer company? Producer company is still not defined under the new act. It is still covered under the old act, that is the Companies Act 1956. So the section here is section 581. 581 subsection A clause 1. So basically the producer company is one which is formed by producers. So producers here means what? Production of any manufacturing good, mining, anything into manufacturing, mining, or even teaching. Teaching also is considered under a production company. So anything which is into some kind of production, either be a production of a good or a production of a service, can get itself registered under the old act as a producer company. So this is producer company. Then we have an investment company. Now what's an investment company? Investment company is the one whose primary business is to buy shares of another company or to buy securities of another company. It's like this. Suppose if I am Reliance Mutual Fund. So Reliance Mutual Fund's objective is what? To invest into another companies and to get returns from the companies. So the objective is to invest into another company's shares and debentures and get profit from them. So that is an investment company. Then we have a statutory company. So this I have already explained. Statutory company is under a statute. That is your ICAI, it is also RBI, LIC, UTI, all of these are statutory companies. So we have, what we have done so far is we have done the classification of the companies, we have done the various types of companies, and we have done what are the different features of the company. In the types of the company, now we will do in detail the one-person company. So in one-person company, when we say how many people are required to set up a company, we said minimum one person. So when minimum one person is required, that one person should be, the one thing that is required is that person should be the resident of India. And who's the resident of India? We all know. Any person who has stayed in India in the previous year for at least 182 days is the resident of India. So if you are a resident of India, then you are eligible to incorporate an one-person company. Now, see, if that one person who has incorporated the company dies, then what would happen to the existence of the company? We have said that in the features of the company, that company has a perpetual succession. But when we say that one person of the company dies, then what happens to the existence of the company? The existence of the company comes into a question mark. Therefore, this should not happen. Now, we don't want this to happen, therefore we have a provision here. Now what is the provision? The provision is appointment of nominee for the single person of the OPC. So if there is not more than one member and if there is only one member who has incorporated the OPC, then compulsorily that one person has to appoint a nominee. So in case of the death of that person, now this nominee becomes the sole member of the OPC and the OPC's existence would never come into a question. So this is the third thing of an OPC. The first is minimum one person is required. Second thing is when one person should be a resident of India. And the third thing is he should have a nominee. Now, we also said that what is the liability of the member? So the liability of the members also here would be limited only. Okay. Now the other thing is when we are talking about the member or the nominee of the OPC, then who can become the member or nominee? Can any person become the member or nominee of the company? So the answer is no. The minor, if any, cannot become the member of the OPC, but a minor can become a member of a public company or a private company, but he cannot become a member of OPC. Therefore, this is one condition we must always remember, that minor cannot be either a member or a nominee both. Okay. Now, OPC cannot be converted into a Section 8 company. This means what? I as a single person, can I run a Section 8 company? No. So a single person company cannot be anytime converted into Section 8 company. So from this point, we must also understand that companies are convertible into different forms. This means an OPC can be converted into a private company. A private company can be converted into a public company. A public company can again be converted into a private company. A private company and a public company both can be converted into a Section 8 company. But one person company cannot be converted into a Section 8 company. Now next we have a NBFC. Now what's an NBFC? NBFC is a non-banking financial company. So non-banking financial company means a company which is like an investment company, but it is not a bank. So a company whose business is to finance another company's business or to invest into the businesses of another company, but it is not a bank, then it is a non-banking finance company. So, can a one-person company work as an NBFC? No. So, one-person company cannot work as a banking company, as a financing company or an investment company or an NBFC. Next is, can a one-person company be converted into any other kind of company? Any other kind of company means, can it be converted into a private company? So the answer is yes, it can be converted into a private company, but at least 2 years should have passed. At least how many years should have passed? 2 years. So if today I incorporate myself as an OPC, then I have to continue working as an OPC for at least 2 years. Only after these 2 years, then I would be able to convert myself into a private company or any other company, but apart from Section 8 company and an NBFC. So when I convert myself into any other kind of company, then I have to increase my paid up share capital or I have to increase my turnover. But the paid up share capital should not increase beyond 50 lakhs or the turnover should not exceed 2 crore rupees. So if you remember the small company, in the small company we said that the paid up share capital should not be more than 50 lakhs, but it can go up to 5 crores. But when we are talking about a one-person company, then the paid up share capital cannot go beyond 50 lakhs and the turnover cannot exceed 2 crores rupees. But after conversion, the paid up share capital and the turnover can increase. So I'll repeat this point again. The point says that OPC can be converted into any other kind of company, but at least 2 years should have elapsed and it should work as an OPC for at least 2 years. In these 2 years, the paid up share capital should not have gone beyond 50 lakhs or the turnover should not have exceeded 2 crores. If these two provisions are satisfied, then it can get itself converted into any other kind of company, and then the paid up share capital or the turnover both can increase beyond these threshold limits. Then we have the benefits of one-person company. So why a single person want to incorporate a company? So why? The reason is very simple. I get the benefit of the features of the company. So what are the features of the company? We might revise. It has a separate legal entity, perpetual succession, limited liability, transferability of shares. It can get easy access to the markets. Loans are obtainable. Then the company also gets a visibility. Then the company also gets a share capital. The company also prepares its financial statements according to the laws. Therefore, even though you are a very small company or even though you are incorporated by only one person, still the confidence of the small entrepreneur is being boosted up that, today you are working on a small level, but tomorrow